Hi guys, it's ASBYT and I recently received this cheeky little package from Google, and inside was something I've been waiting to share with you for a pretty long time. That's right, as many of you guessed over on Twitter, Google sent across their brand new Pixel 6 series, the 6 and the 6 Pro.
Start it up!
So before we get into the differences between the two, the full spec list, the full walkthrough of all of the brand new features, what's the unboxing experience like? Well, starting with the 6, when you lift the lid, you have the phone, which we'll put to one side, a little miniature manual, a Type A to Type C adapter, and a Type C to C charging cable. Simple, clean, with no frills, and no charger. Yes, that's right, just like Samsung before them and Apple before them, it seems that the charger is on the way out of retail boxes. Let me know how you feel about that. Now the 6 Pro experience is basically identical again, outside of course, the phones, which do have some key differences, but they also have one thing in common. Yes, Google, you have finally joined the 21st century when it comes to designing a flagship smartphone, something I've been crying out for the last few years. The Pixel 5 was fine, but it never really felt like a true flagship. The 4 series had fairly substantial bezels, certainly not a looker, and I don't really feel I need to really address the Pixel 3 series when it comes to, again, aesthetics. So why are these so much better? Well, starting with the display, both look far more modern. A 6.4-inch Full HD Plus OLED panel on the 6 and a 6.7-inch Quad HD Plus OLED on the Pro. The 6 is flat and the Pro is curved. The age-old debate about which style is better will rage on, but both do look and feel really nice and premium. And you have an in-display fingerprint scanner, but interestingly no face unlock it seems. I'm not really sure why. I must say the Pixel 6 has a kind of Sony Xperia type of vibe, and the Pro actually reminds me aesthetically of the Samsung S10 Plus. And to be fair, I love the look and feel in the hand of that phone, so I'm a big fan. The same centre punch hole cutout for the front camera on both, but they do have slightly different specs. An 8MP sensor on the 6 with an f2.0 aperture and an 84-degree field of view, compared to the 11.1MP sensor with f2.2 aperture and a 94-degree field of view on the Pro. Now, while we're on cameras, we may as well flip to the rear array, and this is another kind of finally moment for Google, as they've always had pretty brilliant standard and portrait shots, but were slow to incorporate a full set of lenses compared to rivals. They'd either not include an ultra-wide or drop a decent telephoto lens for zoom shots, but now here it seems we might finally have, certainly on the Pro anyway, the complete package. So first up we have a significant hardware jump on the primary lens, which is a 50MP sensor with f1.8 aperture. Google for the longest time have been kind of stuck with a 12MP hardware setup on the primary camera, focusing very heavily on the software side of things to get great images. And while this was great and worked in certain situations, you kind of felt it was definitely due a hardware upgrade because the other manufacturers, the likes of Samsung and Xiaomi, for example, were looking to really push the boundaries in the hardware department, and Google were going to get left behind if I felt they didn't change anything. So yeah, now we might finally have the best of both worlds. The ultra-wide is a 12MP sensor with f2.2 aperture and a 114-degree field of view, and we have a 48MP telephoto lens with f3.5 aperture, 4x optical zoom, and up to 20x digital zoom. Not the highest counts, but certainly competitive. We also have a laser detect autofocus sensor, as well as optical and electronic image stabilization, features that also are present on the standard 6, and the main real difference here is the fact that we lose a telephoto lens, and we have a 7x super res digital zoom instead. So it won't go as far and images won't be quite as sharp, but outside of that telephoto lens, the cameras are very, very similar, and it's a pretty decent setup for a standard phone. Now, one thing that I think will be quite polarizing is the actual design of the camera lenses, the stripe across the back. I personally quite like it. I prefer the symmetry here to the majority of phones that have the camera at the top left-hand side, for example. And yes, it sticks out, but it doesn't wobble on the table, and it acts as quite a nifty little ledge if you wanted to prop it up. 4K 60 video on both the rear cameras, but only 4K on the front on the Pro, 1080p on the standard, and it is only max 30 FPS, which I personally don't have a problem with, but I think if you are looking to create a lot of fast-paced action style talking to camera shots, I think you would like the 60 frames per second option. Not a deal breaker, but a lot of the top flagships have 4K 60 on both. So outside of the two stripes, the rest of the rear on both is pretty plain and clean. Rear, clean. Both displays are Gorilla Glass Victus, with the same on the back for the Pro, but the standard 6 back has Gorilla Glass 6 instead. Both also have alloy frames, which again is nice to see. Originally I thought the darker colour was nicer, but now I'm actually not so sure. You can get both colours on both models, but the 6 also comes in kind of coral, and the Pro in sort of sunny, I think are the names. Silly names aside, which of the two colours out of these two would you go for? The remaining specs include a max 8GB of RAM on the 6, 12 on the Pro, both with 256GB of max storage, IP68 water and dust resistant rating, Android 12 with 5 years of updates, which is pretty incredible indeed, not to be sniffed at, stereo speakers, and the two final main ones are another at last moment. Because firstly, we now have decent battery capacity on both, something I don't feel we've seen enough of on recent Pixel lines. 4,614 mAh on the standard and 5,003 on the Pro. And we also finally may have the first real fully iPhone alternative. Now, before you jump down the screen and say, hey, Xiaomi and Samsung and OnePlus and Google make great phones, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, with the Google Tensor chip, which is powering this, the in-house Google chip, Google now finally have full control over the hardware and the software, something that up until now only Apple has been able to do, really, with their Bionic chips that they power themselves. And it helps to optimize the phone completely. Google no longer have to rely on other manufacturers to create the hardware to go inside. This may truly help Google reach that next step. Creating this phone inside and out from the ground up really is an advantage, something, like I said, that Apple have exceeded with in the last few years. Now, due to embargoes, I can't really go currently right now into a great deal of detail on performance compared to the likes of the new iPhone series and the latest from Qualcomm Snapdragon chips in the powering Samsung phones, etc. But I will do very, very soon. Trust me, they are coming, so subscribe to the channel to be notified when I post those videos, and I will have my full reviews on both of these phones coming in the next few days. Camera and battery tests and comparisons, etc. as well. So if you're interested, drop a subscribe, and I will see you when those videos drop. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.